Hey everybody, happy St. Patrick's Day Eve. Last night I posted a prayer that in my story or inspiration story, a 2-page prayer, and I said you might be surprised who that prayer was from. Well, spoiler alert, that prayer was from the great St. Patrick that everybody's going to celebrate tomorrow. And one thing that really I think a lot of people don't know, maybe they do, but who is this St. Patrick? So, what if I told you he was a young British guy? And see, his granddad was a priest, so he grew up in a religious background. And I really didn't know all this until I read Jamie George's Poets and Saints. I must confess, he does a great job outlining this, and it captivates me, and it stuck in my head, and I couldn't wait to St. Patrick's Day to share. But so Patrick grew up in Britain. His granddad was a priest, and then one day he, in childhood, I don't know exactly what age, but he was captured by Celtic pirates, and everyone in his family escaped except Patrick. Now, a lot of people weren't, his parents, I wouldn't say, they were probably upset, but they just kind of went on about life. Patrick was kind of a misfit. So once he arrived in Ireland, he was bought as a shepherd, and he spent most of his days out with the flock and tending the sheep. And he wrote a lot in his back in his writings of fighting the cold and hunger. So it wasn't good days for Patrick. And he started mentioning how he really started then noticing the creation of the great Creator. It's something about nature, and one thing about driving to work, sometimes I like to go the back route, but I'll see these flocks, of sheep and goats and these dogs out there that tend those sheep and dogs. And it just, to me, I'm a dog person, but it strikes me because, it just kind of draws me back to God and how he created all this and these beings and these dogs that's what they do. They sleep during the day, and at night they are to guard their flock. And so kind of, to me, that represents God, protecting us a lot of times. But anyways, Patrick began to kind of realize his lack of faith, to say, he knew about God, but it wasn't much of a relationship, I guess you could say. And one night he had a dream, and he said he had this idea that he could return back to his homeland. And so he did. He ran away. And on that ship, he had a dream, of coming back and this great homecoming of sorts. And when he gets back to Ireland, or to Britain, sorry, he's not really welcomed that well. It's something like he's changed. And a lot of times, people go through things and it's like, you changed, or they come closer to God, and people start recognizing that, and sometimes that distance people away from them, and they're like, where's that guy that used to be cool or do this or that? And I can't explain it, but it's just kind of not me. That's how Patrick explained it. So he had a dream one night, and it's crazy, but he had a dream that that these people were calling him the voice of the Irish. And this kind of just caught his attention as a moment that maybe God was trying to tell him something. So he then went to France to study theology. And he did so for over 2 decades. Not just a 2-minute or a 2-month deal. His heart's on fire for Jesus, but he spent over 2 decades training for missionary work, spiritually and emotionally, and building up his his thoughts and theology and preparing for what he needed to do. So eventually he was welcomed into the priesthood and he was ordained. And then at the age of around 48 or 50, he returned back to the land of Ireland, the place where he was held as a slave. And he believed that there was something that God wanted him to do to introduce faith to him. So when he was when he got back to Ireland, it wasn't just a grand ceremony as well. He wasn't really welcomed. He was put in a lot of life and death situations. But here's the approach that really catches my eye with St. Patrick that many of you may not know, but Jamie George does a great job pointing this out. He says there's two methods of really missionary work, or two ways of evangelism, and it's the Roman model, which is what most of the early churches were based on, and what Patrick grew up with. And so there's that model of presentation. Okay, when they present people with this idea of the gospel, we present this idea. Okay, what's your decision? And if you don't take up on that decision, then okay, we're gone. Or if we do, welcome to the fold. If not, bummer for you. So this idea of fellowship. Now this is where Patrick is different, and I really, this is key, because when you're talking stuff or you're trying to understand people, you gotta be able to connect before you can correct. And Patrick understood this. So he, instead of going and saying, this is going to be the way, this is the way to heaven, this is the way of Jesus, this guy, you're talking about a Celtic culture that has never really, they were polytheistic, barbarians. They kind of went about their own ways, and you're telling them about this one God. So it was a transition period. So, but what St. Patrick did was he went and with this approach of, I'm gonna, why do y'all do what you do, or why do you believe this way, or oh, I can kind of see that. Okay, that makes sense, because we're not all the same. Our cultures are not the same. And a lot of times when you go at people and you try to make them understand something, and you got to get to know them in a way and understand maybe why they see the world the way they do, or why they see God the way they do, or why they don't see God, or if they believe in numerous gods. There's a reason for that. So Patrick kind of established this idea of fellowship. I want to hear your story first. I want to get to know you, why you believe the way you do. Maybe there's a story in the back of your childhood of why you are the way you are. Most of us, there is. Then the second step of missionary and conversion. Okay, I believe in one God who has empowered me to serve you. You share what God has done for you and how God has transformed your heart. And a lot of people can connect with that when you go about it that way. And then finally, it's that invitation of, will you declare your life to this God, and he will also indwell in you and empower you just like he does me. And if not, then I'm still going to be your friend, and I'm still going to try to be here, and I'm going to minister to you, and I'm going to talk with you, and I'm going to, this is not a, like, on the spot, got to be like, okay, so you go from believing all these gods to no God, or one God. That just doesn't happen. Now, a lot of times people do make decisions in the heat of the moment, and then they really don't convert, and it don't sink into their heart. And that's what Patrick believed. So when you think of St. Patrick's Day, a lot of us believe in this, this leprechaun in green, and I'm wearing green tonight. But, tomorrow when you're celebrating, maybe share this. A lot of people may not know. I wasn't aware of this as well. His story. I knew about St. Patrick, but I didn't know his story. Maybe you don't know your neighbor's story. Maybe you don't know that person at the church's story that is a little different. Maybe they had a different upbringing, you know. And so before you start throwing maybe, this idea of religion and Jesus at people, maybe you need to get to know them and try to relate to them, and then present to how God has changed your heart and transformed your heart. And so this is, and this is, I think, a big deal, because it blows my mind that a lot of churches don't celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Like, maybe it's not as big as Easter, I get that. But, I just feel like it's a big deal, and it really just has turned into a holiday of drinking beer and wearing green and not trying to get pinched and whatever it be. And that's scary, because this guy, St. Patrick, was special, and he set kind of like a standard of this way of a different belief of evangelism. And so I just wanted to share that with you. It caught my eye. I'm going to put out again that prayer that he wrote. It's just unbelievable how well written and versed it is. And so anyways, and then at last, I want to give a shout out to my old high school and employer, and Coach Davis and his daughter Julie, for their contributions in St. Baldrick's. This day, Riverdale High School raised over $40,000 to help childhood cancer. And there's something special about Riverdale. I've always said that, and a lot of it is the people. And keep doing what you're doing, and I'm so happy and proud, and hope one day we are able to find that cure for cancer. So tomorrow, when you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day, maybe now you can maybe share that with others, and really, who is this St. Patrick guy, and why was he different, and how did he basically, one of the very few, if the only person that was able to kind of convert a land or country to a different religion without bloodshed, without going to war. I mean, it's crazy. So clearly he was doing something right, and maybe we could take some notes from that. So remember to let your light shine, and thanks